Welcome to the Tulip Christian Church podcast, where we hope to inspire and strengthen your relationship in Jesus Christ. We encourage you to love Jesus and love people. Now, let's get to this week's sermon.
We may have to have Anthony do some more of those breathing exercises with us as we go through our time together here. So if I see anybody nodding off, we'll have him come back up and we'll re-engage now. I'm glad to be back with you. We are continuing this morning talking about discipleship and what it means to be a disciple. And we're operating with this definition of disciple is that it's not just a student of the teacher. It's not just someone, it's not a pupil or someone who just wants to know who the teacher is or know about the teacher. It's a student who wants to be everything that the rabbi is, everything that the teacher is. And so as disciples of Christ, if we truly pursue discipleship, if we truly want to be disciples of Jesus, then we want to be everything that he is. Everything that he is. We want to love like him, we want to talk like him, we want to interact like him, we want to treat the life like him and be a part of the world as he was. We want to be everything that he was, and we want to follow so closely after him that at the end of each day, as we examine ourselves, we have the dust of the rabbi on us, right? I think I told you that in the first week. Like back in Jesus' time, they walked everywhere they went. They were on dirty, dusty roads all the time, wearing sandals. Their feet were dirty. You see some washing feet examples in the scriptures. And those disciples followed Jesus so closely that at the end of the day, they had like dust in their mouth and in their hair, and his dust was all over them because they followed him so closely. That's what we want to be. And so we talked in our first week about the mission of the church, right? To go out and make disciples. What does that look like? It goes go out and share Jesus' love with the world and baptize them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and then teach them to obey all of his commands. And the way that we teach is that we walk and live in those commands as well, as an example, and we invite others into that relationship. And that's not easily done if we do that alone. So the next week we talked about community. We got to have a community of faith around us that's encouraging us and spurring us on and driving us closer to our relationship with Christ and helping us as we lead others in their relationship with Christ. We can't do it on our own. It takes teamwork, right? Next week, as we look ahead, we're going to talk about love. The love of the church, the love of disciples. What's that really look like? What is love? That's what we'll be looking at next week. But this week, I want to talk about generosity. A generous disciple, the generous church. And this is a topic that's going to take us in a few different directions, really 3 different directions, but we're going to look at generosity in our time. We're going to look at generosity of our talents. And we're going to look at generosity of our treasures. Okay? So those are the 3 things that we're going to point at here. And as I think about this, when I think about generosity, what comes to your mind as you think about generosity? Is it like just giving? Is it like just give a little bit more? Is that generosity? Maybe. Maybe could be. But I want to encourage us and challenge us to think about generosity a little different than just giving. I want us to think about it as sacrifice. Generosity is sacrifice. When I was a kid, my grandpa, I don't know how he got this talent. I'm not sure how he learned this, but he would gather up old junk bicycles, and he would take them apart, disassemble them, and find the good pieces from each bicycle, and he'd put them together, and he'd spray paint them. And so my brother and I, for a long time, we rode around. He had a black bicycle with one of those big, long banana seats. You remember those big, long seats? I thought it looked funny. That was my brother's bike, but I had a BMX. Well, like I had many pieces of a BMX all parted together, but mine was red, and it was cool. It was a dirt bike. We used to jump hills and do all kinds of fun things. But as I got older, I aspired to something more than the BMX bike. I wanted a 10-speed. You remember the 10-speeds had those curled over handlebars, and like when you sat down on them, you got down real low, aerodynamic. You could go really fast. I wanted a 10-speed, and there was a little discount store in the town where I grew up called Jack's Discount Store, and they had a 10-speed there. I really wanted it. And so I saved my money. I mowed a few yards. I did some chores. I saved up my money. I think it was $89. I don't know why that number sticks in my head, but I think it was $89. This was a long time ago. This was an expensive bicycle, and I wanted that treasure so badly. I saved up enough money. I bought the 10-speed. I thought I was the coolest kid on the block, and I know this doesn't make sense to most of you kids now, but we used to like ride bikes all over the place. Like there were days in the summer when school was out where I left in the morning and I didn't come back until night, and we were out riding our bikes. We went to the city park, we went to the swimming pool, we rode down on the gravel roads. I know, dangerous, right? We were risk takers. We would ride our bikes all over, and I loved riding this 10-speed bicycle. I treasured it. Like, you're going to think this is funny. It was blue, had a little bit of silver on it. I used to polish it. I used to polish my 10-speed bicycle. That's how important it was to me. And my brother is 2 years younger than me. He wanted to ride that 10-speed. He wanted to be cool like me. So being the generous, loving brother that I was, I said, no way, Jose. I never would let him ride that bicycle. That's how important it was to me. You know what's funny? I was thinking about this. I treasured that bicycle. I mean, I took care of that thing. I made sure that the kickstand was always properly out and nobody could bump it. I'd set it in the back corner of the garage and kept it safe. And sometimes I'd even cover it up with a blanket. We had this like old nasty blanket in the garage. I covered it up so we wouldn't get dust on it. I took good care of this treasure. I wouldn't let anybody touch it. I wouldn't share my treasure with the world. I have no idea what happened to that 10-speed bicycle. I got no clue. I don't know where it's at. I don't remember. I must have fallen off of it and hit my head. I don't know what happened, but I can't remember what happened to my treasure. The only thing I can remember about it is that I would not give it away. I wouldn't give it away for anything. I wouldn't let my friends, my best friends even, ride my 10-speed bicycle. I held on tightly. I wasn't very generous in those days. What's the one thing that you treasure above all else? What's the one thing in this world that you couldn't stand the thought of living without? What is it for you? What's your treasure? My treasures have changed over the years. Lydia can speak to these treasures. I've had some difficulty. At one point I treasured my yard. I know that's a funny thing to treasure, but I spent hours and hours on this little bitty yard in Columbia. I killed all the grass, then I tilled up all the dirt, and then I planted grass seed, and I'd go out there and water it every day, and I'd take good care of it. I'd rake it out, and it was like a golf course. It was amazing. I thought it sometimes about maybe cutting it with scissors. I wanted to be that precise, and you know what happened to my treasure? It got a fungus, and then there was these big orange polka dots all over my yard. I'm convinced that even my wife or one of my neighbors did that to me, just to help me see this unhealthy connection I had with my treasure. Right? We had an apartment when we first got married. I had a steel chainsaw. I loved my steel chainsaw. Man, I lived in town, but I loved getting out there and cut up a little bush or something. I didn't get to cut up trees much with it. Somebody stole that chainsaw. Somebody stole my treasure. And I was brokenhearted that I lost my treasure. What's the one thing in your life that you can't imagine parting ways with? What if I asked you to give it up today? What if I asked you to give it away? Today. Right now. Could you do it? I still hold on to some things. But I hope that this morning we will learn that disciples of Jesus are increasingly more generous with their time, their talents, and their treasures. That's where I want to take us today. I say increasingly because I think it's going to be a lifelong experience for me. It's going to be a lifelong learning experience for me to become increasingly generous to the point at which I don't treasure anything of this world above Jesus Christ. But I'm not quite there yet. I'm still working on that. It's still work in progress, okay? If you be patient with me, I'll try to be patient with you. Maybe you're already there. I don't know. I want to think about our time. Time is one of the three things that you can't get more of. Like think about this. I cannot give you more time. I can't put more time in your hands. Now, we could go out and we could train on some of our talents, our skills, our giftings. We could go train on those, maybe acquire more, maybe able to do a little bit more. We could grow in our talents, but I can't help you grow in time. I just can't do it. We don't get to add any more time. And we might be able to accumulate more treasure. Okay? Treasures might be money, it might be material possessions, might be other things like that of the world. We might be able to get more of those things, but we can't get more time. So time becomes really precious, doesn't it? Anybody feeling the tug and pull of the rat race of school starting and the millions of different directions to go with sports and activities? Anybody else besides me feeling that? Time is precious. There's only so many minutes in a day. There's only so many days in a week. There's only so many weeks in a year. There's only so many years in a life. Time's precious and it's finite. And Jesus left us an example of this. Last week we were in the book of Mark. The week before we were in the book of Matthew. This week we'll be in Luke. And then guess where we're headed next week? John, that's right. We're not going to go through all the stories, but I just want you to think about this, and I want to challenge you or encourage you if you've been doing this, but maybe this week sit down with Luke and just read through and look at the number of times Jesus' time was interrupted. The guy was constantly deciding to go off to a solitary place to pray, only to be interrupted by somebody who wanted something from him. Healing, maybe. Wanted to ask him a question. Maybe their intentions weren't even good. Maybe they just wanted to trip him up. It's like catch him a little bit off guard. That was what they were pursuing. But constantly, he's moving from one place to another. His whole purpose was to come and share the good news, to go from village to village and teach the good news that the kingdom of God had come. But everywhere that he went, he faced interruptions. Sometimes he would face interruptions upon his interruptions. Like he would get called to go and heal somebody far off, and while he's walking to go heal them, someone else would touch him to take healing from just touching his robe, and suddenly we've got an interruption in the middle of a crowd. Jesus was interrupted all the time. His time was precious. Jesus lived approximately 33 years on this earth. For that 33 years, approximately 3 of those years were spent with his disciples, teaching them everything that he knew, showing them the way to live. Time was precious for Jesus. And so what would you do if I interrupted your time? Dwayne, if you were working on tomorrow when you're working and you're super busy and I show up and I'm just like, hey, you got a few minutes? Can we just talk for a few minutes? And that few minutes turns into a few hours, and before you know it, you've lost an afternoon or a morning. How are you going to feel about that? You're just going to love me and say, come on over, man. Yeah. He's smiling at me, but I can tell you right now that probably, at least inside, he's a good man, so he probably would continue smiling, but probably inside there's going to be something just like not quite sitting well, right? Time is precious, and you would think that Jesus would get discouraged and frustrated, irritated with the people around him, the crowds that are pushing in. I mean, think about this. How long do you think it would take to serve dinner to 5,000, to 10,000, to 12,000 people? Like, we have carry-in dinners here, and it feels like a long time before I get to go through the line and Jason gets to go through the line, right? Because all the rest of you are going through the line. All you kids are in the line in front of us. But how long would it take if there was 10,000 going through the line or 10,000 meals being handed out? That would take some time. Time's precious. Wouldn't that be an irritation to Jesus, who just simply wanted to go sit up on the mountainside and talk to his closest followers? Jesus was generous with his time. He was sacrificial with his time. He showed us time and time again. If you read through the book of Luke or any of the Gospels, you see that each and every time he was interrupted, he chose to give his attention, to give his time to those who were interrupting him. Maybe that would be a good lesson for me to learn. I'm not a very patient person. I often am pretty selfish, and so I want to do my thing on my time. Like tonight. It's going to happen tonight. It happens every night. At about 9 o'clock, I'm going to turn into this evil person, okay? I'm going to be tired, I'm going to be cranky, and the only thing I want to do is sit and watch the Chiefs finish off the Eagles. That's the only thing I want to do, right? So, if somebody comes and interrupts me, especially one who's wearing an Eagles jersey, I'm going to be a little bit irritable in that moment. But what I need to do is give my time, my attention, to the one who just wants to be with me. Maybe he wants to jab me a little, but just wants to be with me, right, and have fun. Jesus was generous with his time. He was a healer. He did all kinds of things with his time, but he never held on to it. He never held on to his time. He never protected his time that I can see in any of the scriptures where he said, you know what, I don't have time for you. I know you need something from me, but now's not the time. You'll have to wait. I never see that in any of these stories. I just see him simply looking with compassion and giving his time. Because our teacher was generous with his time, as disciples, as his followers, we too should be increasingly generous with our time. What about talents? What about talents? There's a parable called the parable of the talents, or parable of minas. That's not exactly where I'm going. I think that had something more to do with like resources or money and finances. Maybe we'll get there in just a minute. But when I'm talking about talents in this case, I'm talking about like, what are your skills? What are the things that you do well? What are the things that you can give? Maybe it's not even things you do well, but you're just able to do. Are you generous with your talents? Think about Jesus again with me for just a minute. What was he good at? What was he skilled in? We already talked about it a little bit. He was really skilled at being sacrificial with his time. It's because he had a heart of compassion. One of his giftings was this heart of compassion for each and every person that he encountered. I think he even had compassion for the Pharisees and the Sadducees, the guys who were doing a little bit of wrong with God's rules. I think he had compassion enough that he would still stop and allow himself to be interrupted, and he would look on them with brokenheartedness, and then he'd want to try to instruct them or correct them along the way. Some of them listened, some of them didn't. Jesus had the skill of compassion. Jesus was a healer. How many of you are healers? Moms, raise your hand. Every one of you are healers. Like when my kids fall down and bump their knee, they don't come to me. Where do they go? They go to Mom. She's the healer. Moms have the skill, the talent of healing. Now, I'm being a little facetious there, but Jesus was a healer, right? He could take the people who were blind and give them sight. He could allow the people who were lame and couldn't walk to get up and walk away. He could do amazing things. He was generous with his talents. He was a teacher. Jesus was a teacher. Above all else, he was a teacher. He spent time sitting and teaching. Most of the time that he was traveling to a location like a synagogue to sit down and teach, to sit down and speak and tell the people about what he knew was true about God's kingdom. He was generous with his teaching. Some of you are teachers. Maybe it's teaching a little different subject area, but you're teachers. Are you generous with that teaching? Dads, look at me, dads. Are you generous with that teaching? How much patience do you have when you're working on a project? One that's got to get done kind of right away. You know, there's a little less time. Are you generous with your time and your talents? You know how to change the oil in the tractor. Does your son? Maybe. You know how to cut firewood. Do your kids? Maybe. Some of you are better teachers than others. What do you know that you're passing on to the next generation? Those are skills that you have. Let me tell you this, some of you are skilled in and gifted at just being good listeners. I know this. I know this about you because I've sat down and talked with some of you, and you just sit and you just listen. You don't try to insert your thoughts. You don't try to tell me how to do me better. You just simply listen. That's a skill that you have. That's your talent. Some of you are good fixers. Some of you are good cooks. Some of you are just good comforters. Some of you can just come along and make somebody feel better just by being in their presence. Those are talents and skills that you have. Are you generous with those? Are you sacrificial with your talents? Our teacher certainly was. always sacrificial, always giving of his talents for the benefit of others. We've looked at time. We've looked at talents. Let's go back to treasures. I think this is telling of me. I have been blessed to get to be here and preach now for, we're getting in a neighborhood of 2 years. It's hard for me to think through that's could be a reality, but in December, I think I will have gotten to be here most Sundays preaching. That's amazing to me. I didn't go back and skim through every single one of my notes or all my sermon notes, but I don't think I've ever talked about money in here. I don't think a single time in 2 years have I talked to you about money. And I think about this, I'm like, why is that? Why would I be that way? Is that wrong? Some of you feeling a little bit uncomfortable right now just as I said money. It's like, oh, he's going to talk about money. I am going to talk about money. Here's why. This is why I'm going to talk about money this morning. Our teacher talked about money a lot. A lot. Like no less than 15 times did Jesus teach on money or wealth or possessions. No less than 15 times did he teach on it. Almost a third of the parable stories that Jesus teaches are about something to do with money or possessions. Our teacher talked about it frequently. Why wouldn't we talk about it? Why wouldn't we make it a priority? I know why I don't. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. It's personal. Your money's your money. My money's my money. I don't want to talk about it. We're not going to have that exchange. Well, that's sometimes true, but there's a problem with that. The problem is this. I think the reason that we avoid the topic of money as preachers or as teachers is because we don't want to get into anyone's business, their sensitive business. So I'm just going to give you fair warning right now that I'm going to do that just a little bit. Okay? Now, if I happen to be glancing out at you and we make eye contact and you think, oh, he's talking to me. No, I'm just talking to the room, all right? I'm talking to me too. Okay? I got to look somewhere. I could turn around and look back there, I guess, but that would be less engaging as the person up front, all right? So if I look at you when I say a certain thing, I'm not saying, hey, you're a cheapskate, all right? I'm not saying that, all right? If I was going to say that, I'd just come to you and say that. And maybe I have said that to some of you. What I am saying is that money is important. It's critically important. Let me just tell you this. Jesus spoke these words. This is in Matthew, but he says this, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Now I want you to soak that in for a minute. I was trying to soak this in with a 10-speed bicycle. Was my heart in a space where I was so protective, where I was so held on to this material possession that I couldn't consider living without it? I think there was a season of life where that would have been true. That was a long time ago. I think I've grown out of that mostly. But money can decide where our heart is. There's a convicting teaching that I've heard is like, you want to see where your heart is? Well, then go check out your bank registry. It used to be go look at your checkbook, your check registry, but I know we don't write checks as much anymore. But if you just went and took your bank statement out, you'd kind of see where your heart goes. All right, you'd see the things that you expend your money on. They're not all bad. And money itself isn't bad, right? Paul said it could be the root of all evil, but it's in itself isn't bad. In fact, money's really powerful. A treasure can be super powerful. It can be an amazing tool for blessing. It's the way that we get things accomplished in this world, this transactional world that we are a part of, that we have to live in. It can be a way that we bless others, that we give, that we help. But you all have been generous. Generosity has allowed for things to happen, like meals to be served in a park to a bunch of kids who, I don't know, it doesn't matter what fraction of them, but some percentage of those kids may not have got lunch if we didn't provide lunch. Well, we didn't provide lunch. Our God did through us. He gave to us so that we could give to others. Money can be a good thing, right? Let me give you a statistic here. I just think this puts it in perspective. What is our relationship with money? Raise your hand if you were alive in the 30s. Nobody. Sawyer, come on. Okay, in like 5 more years, that we'll have another. In the 1930s, 1933, there was a Great Depression. Some of our grandparents or parents lived through that Great Depression, and it impacted them in significant ways. Like, I can remember my grandma, she had the most massive collection of Sweet and Low and sweetener packets that you would have ever seen. Every restaurant she went to, everywhere she went, she gathered up these Sweet and Lows. I don't think she was stealing. I think she knew what it was like to live in a time when that was precious, and they didn't have access to it, and for whatever reason that stuck with her, and so she had these little like hoards of Sweet and Low and hoards of other things. And my other grandma, and my mom has kind of adopted this, like I don't know how many jars of pickles it's okay to have in one refrigerator, but I know when it's too many. If it takes up 3 whole shelves by itself, too many pickles. Nobody likes pickles that much, okay? My mom sees something on sale, she buys it. I think that was an influence from my grandma, who knew a time when you couldn't have what you wanted, and when she was able to have it, she started consuming it. She started taking it in. It was an influence. In the 1930s, this is recent research that's come out, okay? In the 1930s, Christians, this is during the Great Depression, gave 3.3% of their income to the church or to ministry. 3.3%. Some would say that 10% is like the goal. I don't think that's actually true, but I think 10% is a good measure. 10% is in the scriptures. I think 10% is a pretty good thing for us to maybe talk about and target. I think if you aren't giving intentionally, a good starting point would be say, let's work towards an incremental goal of reaching a 10% spot. And it's not that we give God the last 10%, it's that we give him the first 10%. Now, you might be a 1% giver, you might be a 3.3% giver, you might be a 5% giver, you might be a 25% giver. I don't know. That's between you and God. But whatever it is, it's this incremental sacrificial giving that we're striving for. But in the Great Depression, Christians gave 3.3% of their income back to the church. Do you know what that number is today? 2.5%. Less today of income is given. Less today in this abundant time where we have multiple cars and many houses and lots of things, and we can afford to go and buy and do and all these things. Less is given today by Christians. This isn't like the world. We're not calculating in those outside the scope of Christianity, okay? We're not saying what about the non-followers. No, we're talking about like disciples of Jesus today. People who claim to follow Jesus Christ today are giving less than what they used to give in the Great Depression. Yikes. Yikes. I think that might be telling of who we are. Now, perhaps that's not us. We could pretty quickly get into that space and say, yeah, well, that's probably the other church down the road. It's not this church, right? We can do that. That's fine. That's fine. It's not a comparison game. What it is it's an evaluation. It's a consideration of the motivation of our heart. Are we sacrificial with what we have? I want to look at this. We're going to kind of start to wrap up here. This is going to be in Luke chapter 16. I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, but this parable is about a shrewd manager. Jesus has a funny way of telling stories where he draws people in, he draws us in with this story, and then in the middle of the story takes this unexpected twist. Jesus is telling his disciples this story about a shrewd manager. He's telling them about this. There's a wealthy guy who has a manager who's managing his wealth. who's managing his daily business, okay? This is the manager of his business, and this shrewd manager, somehow it becomes known to the owner, to the wealthy man, that like he's not doing it right. Like something's not quite right with the book, something's off here. I don't think that he was stealing, because the owner calls him in and wants to have a conversation with him. I don't think he's saying, hey, you're fired because you're stealing money from me. I think he's just saying, I need to have a conversation with you. Something's not checking out right here. I'd like to know a little bit more about this. In fact, you're going to lose your job. This manager realizes that he's going to lose his job, and so he starts to think of creative ways that he can continue to live his lifestyle. His creative ways are this. He was actually the guy who kept the deeds, or kept the contracts, right? And so whenever his boss would make an arrangement with a neighbor or with somebody else, this guy would come in and say, here's what you agreed to, here's the writing, here's how this whole deal is worked out, here's how this contract is going to be settled. This manager thinks, okay, I know what I can do. I'm going to go out. So he starts going out to these people who are in agreement or in contract with his boss. And he's like, hey, how much do you owe my boss? Oh, 900 gallons of olive oil? What if we call that 500 gallons? Let's rewrite the contract. He's not telling the boss that. Hey, how much grain do you owe my boss? Well, I 100 bushel. Why don't we call it 50? Sounds a little deceptive, doesn't it? A little sinful. Kind of like, are you right now, is the shrewd manager, is he the hero of the story? Not in my mind. He's like, he's cooking the books. He's doing something wrong here, right? It takes kind of an interesting twist, though. In verse 10, Jesus switches this up on it. He's been talking about it. Actually, just before that, he says that the boss is kind of, surprised at, and he even, thinks highly of this shrewd manager. But then he says, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Talking about the shrewd manager who mismanaged the books or who made things up. Well, he's been trusted with very little, he can be trusted with much. But whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So, if you've not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? Now, I just want to stop there for just a second. I think what Jesus is telling us in this passage is that the people of the world are actually better managers of their wealth than those who are of faith. I think he's saying, look, here's what I want from you. I want you to learn. I want you to learn to be sacrificial. I want you to learn to be extremely generous, the most generous of anyone, giving of all your time, your talents, and your treasures above all things. And I want you to do this because if you can't, it's saying to you that you have your heart in the wrong place. Your heart is in your treasures, not in your generosity. In this story, though, he says, if you've been trustworthy with handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, well, who's going to give you more property? Those who manage little will be given much. This isn't a prosperity message. I'm not telling you to be generous so that you get more. I'm telling you that as you are generous, as you are blessing others, it will have the experience for you. You will feel the sensation of having more than you could ever want or need. That happens in time, that happens in talents, and it happens in treasures. Here's the challenge, here's the motivation, here's the place of our heart where it comes together. Verse 13, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. Jesus is not saying to us that money is evil. He's just saying if we hold it above our God, that it can take the wrong place in our heart. What is the one thing that you couldn't live without? if I came to you today and I said, I have discovered a need. I've discovered that there is a worthy, godly need, and it's a need that I'm confident that God is leading us to, and I need you to empty your savings so that we can meet that need. How would that rest with you? Would that put you in an uncomfortable spot? If I was sitting out there, I would be uncomfortable. God can provide abundantly more than what we can ever give. He's already done it. He's doing it every day. You're giving out of your first fruits, and He's continuing to refill those first fruits for you. But He's calling you to be exceedingly generous, and not for the purpose of this world. Like I don't know what God's going to put in front of us. I don't know. We've recently had contact from a missionary who's interested in coming and sharing information here. Maybe that's somebody that we'll meet together as a church at some point. There might be some needs. There might be some other traumatic things that happen in our society and around our world and in the days to come. I don't know what they are. But when they happen, will we be able to faithfully move into that space in a generous, sacrificial way? It might just be with our time. It might be with our talents. It might be with our treasures. It might be with all three. If that's something that causes discomfort in us, then let me challenge us in this way. Let me challenge us to just be prayerful this week. And as we look through the book of Luke, just look for those moments in time where there was complete dependence on God. Jesus is sending out His followers, and He tells them, I don't even want you to take your money bag with you. Don't take anything. You don't need to change your clothes. Just go. Just go. Just go. It'll be provided for. There were times when He would go out and He would just be said, hey, don't worry about what you're going to say. I got you. I'll provide for you. Spirit will lead you. Let's check our hearts, determine where we're at in the time and the treasure and the talents of our life, and be as sacrificial as we can possibly be. Let's pray, and we'll sing together. Father, thank you that you have blessed us abundantly, that not a single one of us in this room truly have need beyond our means. But in the areas where we feel we're short, feel like we don't have what it takes, we don't have the talents, we don't have the time, I pray that you would meet us in those moments and that you would fill us up, that you would make this to be a community where we come together and we share of all that we have, that we be so much like your Son and so much like that church that existed right after he was here living on earth, that we would have all things in common, generous beyond measure, sacrificing all the time, because you sacrificed for us, giving your Son, giving up all that you had so that we can live. I want to pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you for listening to this week's sermon. If you like this episode and want to get notified each week when we release a new sermon, please subscribe to our YouTube channel or add the Tulip Christian Church podcast to your library. Our hope is that you carry this message with you throughout the week while you spread the word of Jesus Christ.